it easier to edit. Clearly, I have my shit together this Friday morning. Okay. Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a New Jersey based singer songwriter who's been writing since she was 15. Having been a part of multiple bands by the names of Killing Monte and Garden State, she's performed all across the US. With 5 years of releasing music under her belt, she's not going anywhere just yet. Welcome, Monte.
Hi. That was a cool
So,
intro.
thank you. I write them myself. Um, so why don't you kind of start by telling me where your music journey kind of all started?
So, when I was like going into high school, like probably like my freshman year, so I guess like 14, 15, I got really into poetry. I took like a creative writing class and I just like started writing poems like all the time. Like my teacher would like give us like prompts for stuff and I was just writing a lot. And then I kind of realized like, oh, like I could like make songs like out of the poems that I'm writing. So I had previously like attempted to learn guitar when I was younger and I just like hated it. Like guitar is like really hard to learn, but I was like obsessed with Taylor Swift and I was like she's like a girl who like plays guitar and like sings her own songs. I was like I could do that. Like I could totally do that. So I was like okay, like I'm actually going to like learn how to play the guitar. So I learned like 3 or 4 chords and I started writing music when I was like 15 and I got involved in some really cool music scenes in Asbury Park, New Jersey. There's like a huge music scene there. There's a lot of like really talented people. And I went to this one music school where they had an artist program, which was basically like you would write songs with different people and then record them in their like state of the art recording studios, like these beautiful consoles and stuff like that. So I got the opportunity to record my music when I was like 16, 17 years old, which was like crazy and like insane for like me at that age. But yeah, and so I started just performing in the area and just loving songwriting.
So if you started from a space of like writing poetry and not really having that background of music, like you played an instrument or anything at the time of writing these things, what kind of sparked that instead of like continuing down the poetry route? What kind of made you turn it into the like lyrical route? Because like they're both like creative like forms of expression. So like what made you choose music over just doing the like written word?
So I definitely think Taylor Swift was like a really big influence, which like love her. She's amazing. I think I just like really looked up to her when I was a kid. And like honestly, the music industry is like a really tough industry, especially for women. So I think like seeing like another woman like write her own songs and like be like this huge pop star like was very inspiring. And I think I always like had a love for music. I like did like singing, you know, like every once in a while, and then I kind of like slowly realized like, oh, like I'm not bad at singing. I'm definitely not great, but I wasn't bad when I was like 15, 16, and I was like, it might be kind of cool like if I tried to like write my own songs.
Did you teach yourself guitar or was it something that you like?
I did not teach myself guitar. I took lessons for like 4 or 5 years. Um, and then I kind of stopped.
Do you think you've noted twice now that Taylor Swift is like an influence just from like listening to some of your stuff? I wouldn't necessarily like align those two just
Really?
like because like sonically more so um rather than like the lyrics. But do you think that that influence bleeds into the stuff that you write? Like is it like to someone that is like a dedicated like Taylor Swift fan, do you think listening to your music they'd be like, I could note her as an inspiration? Or like how do you think that that kind of has translated into the stuff that you write?
I think like more of like my earlier stuff maybe was influenced a lot more by her, but I think like lyric writing wise, I think we write like similarly. Not that like I'm Taylor Swift by any means, but like I think that like she has definitely like influenced the way that like I perceive things and the way that like I write my songs like structurally and like certain words that I use. Like she's a very like descriptive writer. So I
Mhm.
think like I definitely like take after that aspect of it where it's like this like one event happened. Like how can I make this a 3.5 minute song by like describing every single
Right.
detail of.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, it was just like I felt like the vibe of like your more recent stuff, the Taylor Swift thing just didn't align for me. But I mean Taylor Swift is an inspiration to a variety of different people, even just that I've had on here. So it's interesting. Um, so what was kind of the point, like I mentioned in the intro, you were a part of a couple different bands, I think throughout college. What kind of drew you to that, and then what kind of made you pursue something as an individual artist rather than continuing in that kind of scene?
So, I was solo for like a couple of years, like in high school and like going into college. Like I still kind of consider myself a solo artist because even when I did stuff with bands, like I was still doing stuff personally,
Hmm.
like by myself. I think I started solo because I really admired artists like Taylor Swift and like Ed Sheeran, like people that had these like huge solo careers. And as I really when I was in high school, I was such like a little egotistical maniac. Like I I did not want to like collaborate or like work with other people. Like I thought like I was like hot shit. Like I was not. Um and I think like growing up and getting older is like realizing that like there are so many talented people, like especially like where I went to college, like there are so many people who are like incredible guitar players, incredible drummers, incredible songwriters that like I was like I need to like work with these people. Like and actually what's crazy is in both scenarios for my band, other people reached out to me and was like, "Hey, like I've heard your stuff. Like would you like want to come play with like us?" And I was like, "Oh my god, like yes, like are you kidding me?" Like it was crazy. So my first band, Killing Monte, this girl, I was supposed to like be roommates with her, and then like it didn't end up working out for some reason. And she was like, "Oh, I have this friend who plays drums. Like she's looking to like start a band. You should like text her." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I like texted her. Her name's Janelle. She's really cool. And then I had met this guy named Cash, who was like crazy good at guitar, like literally one of the best guitar players I know. And we just like kind of started jamming. And what was so unfortunate, that was Killing Monty, about that band was we literally practiced. We started our band in like January of 2020, and our first performance was supposed to be like March 13th of 2020, and we got sent home. Like
The day the world
literally, or
shut
like
down.
yeah, it was crazy. It was like our performance was like literally like the day before or the day after we got sent home.
Yeah.
So that really sucked, and it really kind of like put a damper in like my like musical journey. Like I really think like if we had like especially like if that band had had more time to like grow and like perform and stuff like that. Like it really kind of makes me sad. Like I see like the music kids like at my college now, and like they're doing shows like every weekend, and like there's a house that does basement shows, and it was like that when I was a freshman in college. But like like once COVID happened, like we couldn't really do that. Like my senior year, we got to do a couple of performances. Like junior year, I think we did one or two, but it was really unfortunate that we got clipped.
Yeah, the one live show that I did in college was at somebody's house, and it was February like 15th of 2020. So it was like a month before COVID had happened. It was like 2 weeks before spring break. Everybody went home and then came back for like 2 days. Everything shut down, and then that was really like a no longer a thing. So it definitely put a damper on the live aspect of music for sure. Um, so kind of in that like same space, like we've touched on it a little bit, but what was kind of the defining moment that you decided I'm gonna commit to being an artist? I'm not like not necessarily like yeah, like the band thing is always like an option or whatever. And you like you said you did that throughout doing the bands, but like at what point did you like fully commit to being like this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to pursue just as like a solo act?
So I think from a very young age, I kind of like so I had seen artists like Halsey kind of like have this like persona on stage where it's like she wasn't Ashley Frangipane, she or Frangipane, however you say her last name. She was Halsey. And I was like, that is like such a cool idea. I was like, so what if I'm not Sophia Montalbano? What if I'm like somebody else when I perform? And so I was kind of like brainstorming like different like stage names and stuff like that. And when I was a kid, I did competitive gymnastics. And my coach used to call me Monte. And I was like, that's kind of like a cool like stage name. So I kind of just started going by Monte at like maybe like 16, 17, and it kind of just stuck. I've like thought about rebranding since because there's a lot of issues. Like there's so many Montes. So that's why recently I kind of did the rebrand with the little slash through it. So it's a little bit easier for people to find my music. But yeah, no, I think like from a very young age, I had this like idea of like, this is a performer, like I'm a performer kind of thing. Like, and this is like what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, the fraction of your last name like that kind of worked out really well. That's a sign, if you will. Um, is there something that you think most often inspires a lot of your writing? Like, is there a common theme to a lot of the songs that you've written and put out? Um, is there like a common, like essentially like a typical like source of inspiration that you kind of take from when it comes to writing songs?
So I think a lot of my older stuff was very influenced by, and like even I guess my newer stuff too was influenced by like relationships and like heartbreak and that kind of stuff. um I am trying to like veer away from that, like still like talk about like relationships and stuff like that, but also like more important things like LGBTQ issues and like mental health and stuff like that because I do struggle with a couple of different mental health things. And it's just like it's good to talk about. Um, I think more recently I've been writing. I don't know if you've like perused my TikTok, but I've been writing a lot about like death, but like death as like a metaphor, kind of. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, please elaborate.
So, like, I think like in a lot of ways, we as like individuals, like in our life, like kind of go through like mourning, like periods of mourning, whether it's like with like relationships or like with ourselves, like there's always like something that kind of like dies in us, like which is kind of like sad. And it's like you can like mourn a person, you can mourn like a part of yourself that is lost, kind of. And I kind of just been like writing about that, like losing a part of yourself or like losing somebody that's like not dead.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. When you just went straight to death, I was like, it just kind of took a morbid turn for a second.
No, and
That
it
makes
is
a lot more sense.
it's really morbid. Like the song that I'm talking about recently, it's called Funeral, and it's like the first line of the song is like, I picture everybody I know at my funeral. Like it is very morbid, but it's like, I don't know. I think it's something that a lot of people think about but like don't want to talk about.
I think those things are what makes some of the best songs. Like it's I mean, and I kind of get what you're kind of going at. I did a song that was called Dreaming to be Dead, which sounds really morbid. And I'm not on the same train with you on that one though. Like I wouldn't call it a morbid song, but it's like it goes through the different aspects of like, oh, like we're so focused on what's coming next. We're so focused on the future when it's like, and it sounds really cliche, but it's like live in the moment. But it's like if you're not aware of like what you're doing now and like present in what you're doing now, and you're just focused on what's ahead, at some point, what's ahead is going to be the end. And so it's like you need to kind of just like cherish where you're at because it's like once that moment passes, you don't have that again. Then it's just a memory. You know what I mean? It's like you look back and like so many people spend so much of their childhood just waiting to be like grown up, but it's like why? This isn't any more fun than being a kid. Like I don't
Yeah.
know why I wanted this. But yeah, no, like I get that. Yeah, no, I mean the picturing everybody at your funeral, I feel like everybody's done that at some point in time, but like it's one of those things where it's like you don't really talk about it. So I like that. I do think that that makes some of the best lyrics, like or best songs even just in general, like things that everybody kind of thinks but nobody really wants to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I also think too, like another like I guess like theme of song that I've been very into lately is kind of like I guess I would call it like morbid pettiness. Or like so I had this song Sucker come out on
Uh-huh.
Halloween, and I had this idea. I had the line like second chances are for suckers. Like I had that line from the beginning. But as I was writing the song, I was kind of like, like what if like this is a story about like a vampire? Like like I kind of was like what if like there was this guy and this girl who like dated, and the guy was a vampire and he like wrongs this girl by like biting her and making her a vampire as well. So I kind of like took this like breakup like event that like happened to me like in real life and kind of like made it almost like comical but like also like petty, like bitter, like fuck you. Or be allowed to curse, I'm sorry.
Okay. you, you had me and then you lost me at vampire, but I got back on board. No, but I mean it's just like it's like one of those things where it's like it's less of how you tell the story and more of the story you tell.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
that's a prime example of it. It's not like what people are going to give a shit about isn't the vampires themselves. It's going to
Yeah,
be the actual like context of the situation because nobody can truly relate to a situation with vampires. You know what I mean?
no.
Like that's not a lived experience, but the concept is there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just like going back to the Taylor Swift thing. She writes something so descriptive. Like she had that whole thing with the scarf and whatnot. Like everybody was like, I get it. But it's like, how many people have really had that scarf situation happen? You know what I mean? It's one of those. It's like how you
yeah,
tell the story isn't as important as the story you tell.
yeah.
Um, how would you describe your music for somebody who's never heard it?
I'd
This is always a fun question.
say weird. Like probably not like like I think that I am slowly trying to find like my own style of production because in my earlier music, I was not a producer by any means. I had so many people helping me, and like those songs are so well done because they were done in professional recording studios with professional musicians and like professional engineers. And like I did go to college for like audio engineering, but I didn't learn a whole lot about production. And I feel like that's kind of like I really wish that I had learned like how to produce my own music. And so I have like a little bit of a setup at home now, and so I've really been like experimenting, and Sucker was kind of like one of those things where it's like, can I like prove to myself that I can record something at home and like the way that it sounds? And Sucker is like not perfect by any means. Like sonically, it's like kind of gross. Like don't listen to it through like criticism ears, but like from like a like a song standpoint, like I'm really proud of it, and I'm really proud of like the writing that I did and the production that I did. So I definitely think like my music is weird. I'm still kind of like sort of trying to find my sound. I think I had an idea like when I was a kid or like in high school, like I had this whole vision of like the artist that I wanted to be. Like I wanted to do pop, like rock music and like all this kind of stuff, like exactly like the steps in order to get there. And like as I kind of got older, I was like, well, like I really like folk music and I really like Americana and like all these different like styles. And it's like I kind of at some point hope that I'm able to make music in all genres, but we'll see what happens. I definitely think like right now it's more like rock.
Is there a song that you've put out that you would say like is the one that like best embodies your work? Like is if you had one song to sell somebody on who you are as an artist to like get them to like want to follow you, want to listen, want to wait for your new stuff to come out, what song would you play for them?
I definitely think King Crayons is like the best thing that I've ever made. I think it's like very well written. I think it's a really good representation of like the kind of writing that I do. And I think I really like the style and like the genre of the song as well.
Do you think that that is the most accurate depiction of like where you're headed, like with your sound and with your writing, or do you think it's just like, because like the first thing you said about it was it's the best, probably the best thing that I've put out. Is it purely based on that, or do you also think that it's like an accurate representation of who you are currently and where you're kind of headed?
I think it's an accurate representation of like my artistry, but I think like where I'm headed is kind of like open-ended because I do love so many different styles of music, and like my biggest thing is like trying not to like put myself in a box per se, like genre wise, or I don't know, anything. Like I released a rock song and it's like I don't think the next song I release is gonna be a rock song. It might be like a folk song, like or even like a country. I kind of released a country song in the past. But yeah, I don't know.
So, do you think that like I'm all for the not like, because I think the genre thing, especially like more recently, has kind of run itself out of like it's nice to have that classification in the way that like okay, you know that you like this kind of music, so if this artist falls under that, you might like their stuff. Like there's that, but it's like I'm a big fan of pop music, but I'm not going to like everything that everybody in that world puts out. You know what I mean? So like having that sort of like classification is nice, but that exploration is also, I think, an important part, especially if you're like not going in knowing kind of what you want to do. You can't just like pick something and run with it and just see what happens. You kind of want to try different things. But do you think that there is going to be a point in time where you have a set sort of like not genre necessarily, but like a consistent sound? Like obviously there's this experimental, like kind of I'm trying different things now, but do you think it's going to continue to be that way? Or do you think that you will kind of find a sound that you like gravitate towards that where you can finally find that like set classification? There's not a wrong answer, just so you know.
Honestly, I'm not really sure. Like if I do, like that'd be really cool. But I think like I kind of like to think of myself as like a musical chameleon sometimes. Like I'm kind of like always like changing my mind about like what I think sounds good and like what I don't like. I love pop music, I love rock, I love indie music, I love like some country, some folk, like Americana stuff. So I don't know. I think I have a lot of different influences and I kind of go through like phases where I write a specific kind of music and then it kind of like changes. So I don't know, maybe.
Do you think there's a benefit in having this sort of uncertainty and variety? Or do you think like, or would like you rather have some sort of like set thing? Like, do you think that there's a benefit that comes from kind of being a little like, I don't want to say unpredictable because that sounds like bad, but like no, like essentially like uncertainty.
I think like having a set sound sort of makes you more marketable. And I think like that's my main issue is like I'm so bad at like marketing myself because like I'm like changing like so much. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to to market like something that is different all the time because not everybody's going to like, like the different stuff that I put out. So
Do you think that there is a group of people, a quote unquote fan base, if you will, that it would gravitate towards the kind of thing that you're doing where it's like changing all the time, where it's like, do you think that you could secure somebody strongly enough as a fan of some sound of yours that they would stick around for the stuff that might be different than what they normally listen to, but they would care because it's still yours?
well, I think that's what Taylor Swift really has done with her career is kind of like make things that aren't usually what people want to listen, but they'll like stick around for. So I don't know, maybe. I hope so. That'd be kind of cool. Honestly, I feel like the people that like mostly listen to my music are like friends from college or like my mom. So that's
Well,
kind of
I
like
think they'll
my
stick around.
that's my market right now. So
Yeah, that was a lot to kind of throw at you. I apologize. What kind of motivates you to keep like putting out music and keep like writing and doing all this stuff? Because like for me, like I'm a very much like an instant kind of gratification person. So it's like when you have people that are listening to it and stuff like that's what fuels a lot of that. But it's like when you're independent and I'm in a similar situation, the people I know are my fan base. And so it's like, how do you kind of keep that going without losing sight of ultimately like what you want to be doing, what you're like, what is it that keeps you going when it's like the only person that you're really depending on is you, if that makes sense.
I think it's definitely hard, and I do get like very distracted by like everyday life. But I think like in general, like songwriting, I feel like is the one thing that I'm like good at in life. So I feel like it's kind of like my purpose, like per se. Like I have a lot of stories to tell, and like I don't know. I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons in my 22 years that I think other people like either can relate to, or like I don't know, maybe as like a warning sign is to like, like don't make the same mistakes I did kind of thing.
That's interesting. Like the don't make the same mistakes. That's a I like that as like a because it's like there was somebody else that I had on that was like a lot of people don't want to address the parts of themselves that they're not necessarily like the biggest fans of or the choices that they've made that they don't necessarily like. Like if you could go back and wouldn't do it again, one of those kinds of things. But it's like I think the best stuff is what's authentic. And I think what makes us the people that we are those kinds of things. So like identifying that and kind of like having that sort of like creating around that idea is great and where music should be. So I like that. Um, how do you, this kind of bounces off of even what you just said. How do you kind of balance being an artist with like everything else in life? Because it's not like your typical thing where it's like you show up, you work, you go home, and you're done. It's pretty like, especially when you're doing it like entirely independent, you're on your own timeline. You're on like you can only do as much as what you have the bandwidth for, what you have the time frame for. How do you kind of make sure you have that time, but also make sure it's not too much?
So I think I definitely stressed myself out a lot with Sucker because I decided that I wanted to have this song come out on Halloween in September. And that is not enough time to number one, market a song, or I mean like record a song. Yeah, I guess that's like, like a full 2 months, but like you have to submit it for like the third party distributor like 3 weeks in advance. So realistically speaking, I had like a month and a half maybe to like record it and like make sure it was perfect. So I definitely stressed myself out a lot with that one. But I do experience burnout like all the time. Like I try to like write something new every single day. I don't do it every day, but just to like keep the creative juices flowing. Like I'll go through periods where I'll write a new song every single day for like 3 months, and then I will write nothing for like 6 months. And it kind of just like goes through like that cycle. But being an artist is honestly one of the most overwhelming things I've ever experienced in my entire life. And like taking it seriously, like because in college like I really tried to, but it's like realistically had no time. Like
Hmm.
I would love to make being an artist my like full-time thing, but it doesn't really make a lot of money for me right now.
Yeah.
um but it's just like there's so many things to like consider when you're an artist. It's like you have to like record the music. Number one, you have to release the music. You have to be posting on your social medias. You have to be like making a website. You have to be making like business cards, maybe like merch of some kind. Like I made like stickers. Like it's just like a lot to, it's a lot. So trying to like maintain that like kind of balance. I also like really struggle with depression, and that makes it like really really hard for me to like do anything related to music. I think for a really long time I just thought that I was like lazy and like I didn't like want to like work on my music, and like sort of recently like I realized like no, like I just have depression, and I it's
It
hard
doesn't
for
make
me
it
to
any
like
better, but It gives an explanation, you know?
Yeah, it's like hard for me to be like a functioning person and like have like a job, let alone like a second job that like doesn't pay. Like that's what being an
Yeah.
artist is. It's like having a second full-time job that doesn't pay.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like a lot of people like some people outsource their production and the mixing and stuff like that. Some people outsource like some social media stuff or some marketing related stuff or like anything like that. But it's like it's really then a matter of like, do you want to put your time into it? Do you want to put your money into it? And
Yeah,
if it's not retaining any money, it's hard to be wanting to put
it's
money
hard to put
into
money.
it.
Yeah.
So no, but you're preaching to the choir. I am very like go all in for like a month or two or like nothing's happening at all. And it's like for me, it's one of those things where it's like I know I'm in one of my best like mental like headspaces when I'm working on music, at least for the most part. Like obviously you have those days where you write something or you're like working on something and I'm like, this is crap and I don't want to do it anymore. So you walk away, call it a day. But it's like one of those things, but it's like I can't if I do it too often, it's just I don't know. You got to make that habit is my thing, but it's one of the hardest things to kind of make a habit of. Um, but I'm right there with you. My first project I wrote fall of my junior year of high school, and I wanted the album to come out in like December. The album actually came out in like February of my senior year. So it was like a year and a half later because I didn't you can't put like that type of a timeline on it, but that's the kind of tight timeline I'm working on right now. So
I
sometimes
think
sometimes putting those dates on it though kind of pushes you to do it because it's like if you have a date that like obviously sometimes it changes, like that's happened to me, but if you put that sort of like definitive like I want this project out at this point in time and you kind of like at least can like build out a time frame for it, like I want it done by then and then before that I want this like recorded already and so I have this time to like mix it or whatever, like it can be a blessing and a curse. Like then it's like, oh, if you like miss the timeline, it's like fuck, like I suck. But then it's
yeah.
like if you meet the timeline, then it's like, okay, like I have this schedule to like work off of. It's hard because you have to like make your own schedule then, but it's something. So yeah, it's hard to be your own boss in that kind of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus the creative thing, like some people are like, oh, like you build that creative habit. Some people are like, you just should do it when like inspiration strikes. Like you don't want to force creativity because like forced creativity
Yeah.
kind of feels like an oxymoron.
I
You
don't
can
think
argue
like
either way, you know?
I don't think you can force it. Honestly, I have like random moments throughout my day like where like I will like think of something and I'll just like write it down in my notes. And then it's like
Hmm.
if I feel like going back to it and like expanding on that idea like I will. And if I don't, I don't. Like I'll just leave it. I'll wait until it like resonates.
Okay. Do you have like a long list of like one-off lyrics that you've like put together and then just haven't touched?
My notes page is terrifying. I have over 1,000 notes, and like I'm 90% sure that's like what takes up the most storage in my phone is my notes.
But
Because like
it's for a good use.
yeah, no, and like too, like even like sometimes I'll go back and I have so many like amazing like unfinished songs, but like the problem that I have is like I almost have like ADHD when it comes to music. Like I like will write something and then I'm like, okay, I need it to like be out immediately. And if it's not out immediately, I just get sick of it. I'm like, this is a bad song. Like, why would I ever write this? Like
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think I definitely need to work on my sort of like timeline when it comes to songs and like being more open about it taking longer. I just hate the fact that like it does take so long for that like gratification to come like
Hmm.
from like working on something. And it does take a lot of hard work to like release a song, but
Yeah.
I wish it took less work.
Don't we all? I wish everything took less work. Do you think because I've always wondered this about my own stuff because I don't have 1,000 notes, but I do have a handful of like little like verses or choruses or like lines that I've written that I just haven't touched. And I've always wanted to go back to, but then it really just ends up the pile gets bigger. Um, but do you think that there is something sort of like I don't want to say like intuition, but like in that same sort of space that's like you because sometimes I'll like write like a one-off thing, but I will go back and like finish it like later that day. But sometimes it'll just like, do you think that there's some sort of like internal subconscious thing that's going on where it's like this wasn't going anywhere, so I'm not doing anything with it versus okay, like there was really something here, so I'm finishing this. Like, do you think that there's anything like do you think that there's a reason that you finish the certain lines that you finish versus the ones that are still sitting in your notes app?
Yeah, I think I'm like also like slightly delusional when it comes to like my life as like a whole. And I think that I see a lot of things like through those like rose tinted like glasses. So like if I'm like thinking about something and like I write something down, like I think like I don't know, I think I just experience things more delusionally than the average person. So like
What do
I
you
think
mean
that
by delusionally?
like I think that like I over like romanticize or like
Oh.
over like think a lot of things in my life. So like I think when I write certain things down, like some of them do really stick because of that like delusion. I don't
So
know if
you
that
think
makes
the ones that are like overly romanticized or the ones that you like wrote through the rose-colored glasses are the ones that you will come back to?
yeah.
Do you think
Or like
do you think it should be that way, or do you think that you should write the ones that were more like, I mean,
I don't know. Like I feel like most of my songs are like very like delusion based or just like very like over exaggerated, if that makes sense.
like meaning like the like sentiment is over exaggerated or like the story itself is like more like dramatized to really get the point across?
I think almost like the emotions, or like maybe that's just me invalidating myself.
There's a lot of
No,
questions to be answered here.
I'm in a lot of therapy. um, but yeah, I just think being a delusional person really helps you write some like banging songs. Like, but no, I think some songs are like meant to exist, and some songs like there's just certain things that like I think we're almost like not ready to like talk about. So like maybe it's like more things need to happen in order for you to like write those like one-liners that you have.
I think that is a good way to sum up the pathway that we just took to get there. um,
I'm so sorry.
oh God, I had a question now I can't remember. Oh, do you ever like I've asked this question to myself before. It's like how do you like do you ever write like a finished song? Like have like a finished song and just don't put it out because like you just don't think it's like good or like are there ones that you just like won't put out?
I have so many songs that are not out.
But will
And
they
I
be out?
I
That's
mean
the thing.
maybe.
Okay.
And the thing too that I've been like trying to do is like record those songs, but again, it's like I have that like musical ADHD where it's like I wrote it like over a year ago and I'm like I don't like it anymore. Like I'm done with it. Like I'm over it.
Which is fair
Honestly,
enough. Which is
like
fair enough.
a lot of the songs that I have out, like King Crayons, like that's like the best song I've ever written. But I have sang that song probably 1,000 times. And like
Hmm.
I don't want to sing it anymore. Like it's a great song, but it's like I wrote it like at this point, like 7 years ago, 6 years ago. Like I'm 22. The song came out when I was like 17 and I wrote it when I was like 15. So it's like
Okay.
I don't know.
It's a tricky thing because it's like I think for the most part, most that I've written, I plan on putting out because I feel like to me, I feel like if I get to that point in the writing process where I'm like, this just isn't it, or it like needs to be put on hold until I can work on it more, then I like can recognize that. But if it's like, I think also part of it is like if you put so much work into something to finish it, it just has to come out. You know what I mean?
I just I
Because
just
like everybody goes through the thing where it's like, oh, like I have all these songs that I'm like back like in my backlogs that are like ready to like that I want to put out, but I just haven't because it's like you can only put out so much at once. And like I have like same thing, whatever. But I'm talking about like the ones that you're like, okay, it's done, but I don't know if I want to like release it.
well, I feel like the definition of done is like different. Like, do I have songs that are like completely like mixed and mastered, ready to go? Absolutely not. Do I have songs that like I've
Okay.
written that like I've performed out? Yeah, but
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. If I That's the problem with me too, is like getting around to the recording process, like isn't my favorite thing in the world. I do really like producing, but actually having to like record stuff is like stressful. Like I'm like this has to be perfect, like or else it like doesn't work.
Well, and something I've learned recently, and I don't know how your order of events or anything goes, but I've noticed that I like songs a lot more because one of my biggest like drawbacks has always been my voice. Like I'm a singer last. I am a piano player, producer, like everything before I am a singer. And so what I've learned is when I put everything down and everything how I want it to sound into like the production before I record the voice, I like how my voice sounds in it a lot better. Plus, I think your voice fits in it a lot better because you're singing it differently, whether if you have just the piano like as like a demo recording versus the full production, that makes a huge difference. I will
I think
sing it
so.
completely differently and it's
Yeah.
weird.
I think so as well. And that's another thing that I've been really trying to do is like writing less like with just one instrument and like writing more like with a DAW and like having it open, like writing a bass part, like starting from the ground up. Like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
what are my drums sounding like? What is my bass sounding like? Oh, then what's the guitar gonna sound like? That's kind of how I wrote
Interesting.
Sucker. Like I had the first verse and the chorus, but the rest of the song was like completely after the fact. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you could open for any artist, who would it be?
Open. Honestly, I feel like David Bowie. Like that'd be such a dream.
Okay.
Like he's like one of those people that like his death was like so hard on me. Like I think he died in 2017 and like I was still in high school and like I kind of like had just gotten into his music and like I have this like thing in my like delusional brain where like I think at some point like I'm gonna be like famous and I'm gonna be able to like meet all of my musical heroes. So like I was like, oh, at some point like I'll meet David Bowie. And then like when he died, I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna be able to meet this man. Like
Yeah.
so it was just really heartbreaking. But like he is like honestly one of my biggest inspirations. Like he is just like a queer icon, like before like queer was even like a thing. Like he's just so cool, like as a human being, as a performer. Like I love all of his stuff.
I feel like, at least in my head, based on what kind of like sound I remember, like from listening to your stuff, that seems like it would be a good fit. Because it's like he has, I feel like, a little bit of a variety. Like he's one of those in the Taylor Swift kind of direction where it's like he did a lot of different things, but he had that sort of like consistent persona about him and like within the music, even that even when you had two different kinds of like styles of things, it still sounded like David Bowie somehow.
Yeah, no, I think that's like exactly what I'm trying to go for is like although like it's a different genre, like it's still Monte, you know, like
Hmm.
it's still me.
How do you think you like what would your kind of approach to kind of carry yourself as like a sound from one taste of music to another? What would your kind of like how would you kind of insert yourself into those different genres in a way that makes it still sound all like you? I don't know if I
I
worded
think
that the
like
right way.
I think like lyrically, like I would hope that people would be able to like tell that it's still me. And I think too like my voice, like I don't know if I have like a super like unique voice, but I think that like it's slightly different. So I think that like people would be able to be like, "Oh, like that's like Monty, like that's her
Hmm.
voice, like those are her lyrics," kind of thing. I would hope.
I mean, if you're the one writing them, you'd think that the lyrics would all kind of coincide,
I think
especially
that's a
if you're.
thing too. Like there was I don't remember, I think it was on YouTube, but I think Billie Eilish did it and Taylor Swift did it at one point and like there are like certain like words that they use like and it tells you like how many times they've used like those same words like in songs. And I think that's kind of like just like a songwriter thing is like we use like either like the same like concepts or like same ideas. Like Taylor Swift's thing is like time, like 3 a.m., like
Yeah.
3 a.m., feeling like I just lost a friend. And then there's like another song that has like 3 a.m. or like 2 a.m. or Billie Eilish, it was like bad guy.
Yeah. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I totally think that there is some, like, I find myself using a lot of the same like rhyming kind of things, and so it's just I wish I could get away with it, get away from it, I mean, but um
Sometimes I like to like call back to things. Like I was
mm,
working on this newer song, and so I just released Sucker, and one of the lines I wrote was like, it was something about like we all joked like we all said you were such a joker, like who would have known you made me look like such a sucker. Like I don't know. I kind of like calling back to like those kinds of lyrics.
oh, absolutely. I think that that's something that, because then it's like the people that have been around since the beginning will hear that and recognize it, and it's like it's like if you know, you know, and then it's like cool. What is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists?
I think production wise is something that I'm definitely lacking. Like I think there's a lot of other like incredible independent artists that are amazing at production. But I think the thing that sets me apart is my writing. Like I don't think I know anybody that writes the way that I write. I think there's a lot of like TikTok songwriters that like do like the whole like Phoebe Bridgers like kind of like thing, and I think that there's a market for that, but I think the way that I write is very like relatable, but almost like relatable, like not relatable in a way that where it's like too specific, but it's still relatable, if that makes sense.
That's kind of the target most times. I feel like you kind of want to hit it where it's not like telling you exactly how you're feeling, but it's like you're articulating it in a way that's like round, not quite roundabout, but like direct, but subtly direct.
Yeah, it's like writing a song about like vampires that
Yeah,
isn't
that's what I was
that
gonna
isn't
say.
about vampires, like
Yeah.
everybody's been wronged by an ex. Like everybody's
Hmm.
given somebody a second chance and they've, like messed it up or,
Yeah.
you know, like stabbed them in the back. Like we've all been through like that betrayal and like kind of like heartbreak, I feel like. So I think that's something that people are definitely able to relate to.
What impact do you want to have as an artist with your music, the whole shebang?
I think I I think I just want to like inspire people to create things. I think like as like the music industry is one of those things where it's like it's very profitable, and I think that people should view music as something that like everybody should do. I think like as human beings, like we're supposed to dance, we're supposed to sing, we're supposed to write songs, we're supposed to write poems, like we're supposed to do all of these things, and I think a lot of people are too afraid to do them because they think like it has to like be perfect or it has to be amazing. But I think everybody should write songs. I think everybody should sing. Like I'm always like encouraging people that are like, oh, like I don't know how to sing. That is like bullshit. Like I'm sorry. Like I'm a music teacher. Like I teach singing and piano, and like I think like if you put effort into something, like you're gonna sound better. When I first started singing, I was terrible. I was so bad. And like through years of practice and like learning different songs and different styles of music, like I think I've gotten my voice to a point where like it is like slightly unique and I do have like my own little flair to it and I am like on pitch and in key like um so I definitely think just like inspiring people to like write their own songs and like kind of like how Taylor Swift did for me, just like inspiring especially like women and like non-binary people to like be in the music scene and just exist
And
where
just exist.
well I mean like exist in places where like it's hard for us to exist,
Hmm.
like
Or just exist in general. I think that's also a good point. Okay, so I think that ultimately brings us to our big overarching question that is what the podcast is named after. Why music? And this kind of carries back to your original like whole poetry thing, like why music?
honestly I I think I don't know if I like believe in God per se, but I think like this is like what I'm supposed to do. And like I am on this path because like I am, I don't know, I'm meant to be here. I don't know why, but I just am. I think I'm meant to like do music. And I think that I am very connected to like the music world, if that makes sense. Like I love instruments, like I love like learning new things, I love writing. And I think like those are all things like that songwriting is combined, you know, like it's instruments, it's writing, it's like all the things I love. And like even like production, like that's like a totally like new thing that I'm learning about. But like there's so many ways to like produce a song. Like it's crazy. Like you could have the same song and it be produced like 100 different ways. So I think it's just like the possibilities are endless with music, and I think that's what I like about it so much.
Yeah, it's weird to think that I don't know what the like, time frame is on it or what, but there's like we will go like thousands of years still without like with music like still being new because it's like there's just that much variety in it, which is just kind of crazy because it's really when you think about it, there's like 12 notes in an octave, and you're trying to tell me there's thousands of years worth of material in there?
Yeah. No, and
That
I think
that
too
don't add up.
it's just like an incredible way to like connect with people as well. Like I think
Mhm.
like not everybody like speaks the same language, but like we all experience the same emotions and stuff like that. We all experience like I don't know, I think as human beings like we're so similar, and like we all like to like pretend like we're so different from one another, but like we we experience the same things just in different ways. And I think like songwriting and producing music like just like emphasizes that and really like brings people together.
No, 100%. I think it's because I think that's kind of where you get the whole stories that feel universal, but they're specific to the person that wrote it. It all comes back to the whole it's not about how you tell the story, it's about the story you tell.
Yeah. Because you can tell the same story a million different ways.
Yeah. And still get like the same overarching like point across, which is absolutely crazy. But here we are. All right. Well, I think that concludes this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next Tuesday for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.